The autumn sun filtered through the oak trees in Riverside Park, casting gentle shadows on the walking path. Robert Harrison, a successful investment banker in his late 30s, pushed his fiancée's daughter, Emma, in her wheelchair along the tree-lined route. It was their Sunday ritual, one that Robert had come to treasure since meeting Catherine Morrison and her 9-year-old daughter 6 months ago. Emma sat quietly in the wheelchair, her small hands folded in her lap. Her light brown hair was pulled back neatly, and she wore a pristine white dress with a Peter Pan collar that Catherine had chosen for her. Robert noticed how the child rarely smiled, how her blue eyes seemed to hold a sadness that no 9-year-old should carry. "Beautiful day, isn't it, Emma?" Robert said gently, trying to draw her into conversation as he always did. "Yes, Robert," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. As they rounded a bend in the path, a young boy appeared. He looked to be about 10 years old, with dark skin and wearing a faded brown t-shirt that had seen better days. His sneakers were worn, and there was a certain weariness in his eyes that spoke of struggles Robert could only imagine. The boy stopped directly in their path, looking at Emma with an expression that seemed to mix concern with determination. "Excuse me, sir," Robert said politely, beginning to maneuver the wheelchair around him. But the boy didn't move. Instead, he pointed directly at Emma and said something that made Robert's heart skip a beat. "She can walk," the boy said, his young voice carrying absolute certainty. "Your fiancé won't let her." Robert stopped pushing the wheelchair. He felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. "What did you say?" Robert asked, his voice catching slightly. "She can walk," the boy repeated, his finger still pointing at Emma. "I've seen her, in the park. When that lady, your fiancée, isn't around, she runs and plays like any other kid." Robert looked down at Emma, whose face had gone pale. Her small hands were now gripping the armrests of the wheelchair tightly. "Son," Robert said, trying to keep his voice steady, "that's a very serious thing to say. Emma has been in a wheelchair since I've known her. She was in an accident." "No accident," the boy interrupted. His eyes, old beyond his years, met Robert's directly. "I live near here. I see things. 3 weeks ago I saw her walking by the pond. She was skipping stones. She looked happy, happier than I've ever seen her when she's in that chair." Robert's mind was racing. He thought about the medical reports Catherine had shown him, about the neurologist appointments, about the special school Emma attended. But he also thought about something else, something that had been nagging at him for weeks. Catherine received a substantial disability payment for Emma, and there was the life insurance settlement from Emma's father's death, held in trust for her care. "Emma," Robert said gently, crouching down beside the wheelchair so he could look into her eyes. "Sweetheart, is this true? Can you walk?" The little girl's eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled, and Robert could see the weight of a terrible secret pressing down on her small shoulders. I'm not supposed to say," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "Mama said if I tell, something bad will happen. She said we need the money. She said Daddy would want us to be taken care of." Robert felt his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. He reached out and took Emma's small hand in his. "Emma, honey, nothing bad is going to happen. I promise you, you're safe with me." The boy stepped closer. "I'm Marcus," he said. "I didn't want to say anything before, but when I saw you with her today, you looked like a good man, like someone who would listen, someone who would help her." Robert looked at Marcus, this brave child who had risked a stranger's anger to speak up for another child. "Thank you, Marcus. You did the right thing. The very right thing." Robert pulled out his phone and made a call to his attorney, then another to Child Protective Services. Then he turned back to Emma. "Emma, I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to tell me the truth. Can you do that?" The little girl nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "Can you stand up from this wheelchair?" There was a long pause. Emma looked at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. Then she looked back at Robert. "Will you still love Mama if I do?" she asked, her voice so small and frightened. Robert felt tears spring to his own eyes. This child, this precious child, had been carrying this burden to protect her mother, even at the cost of her own freedom and happiness. "Emma, I will make sure you're taken care of, no matter what. But right now, the truth is the most important thing. Can you stand up?" Slowly, tentatively, Emma placed her small hands on the armrests. And then, inch by inch, she rose from the wheelchair. She stood on shaky legs, not from physical weakness, but from months of pretending, months of sitting when she should have been running and playing like any other child. "I'm sorry," Emma sobbed. "I'm so sorry. Mama said we needed the money for our house, for my school, for everything. She said it wasn't really lying because Daddy's accident left us with nothing, and this was just making things fair." Robert pulled Emma into his arms, holding her as she cried. Marcus stood nearby, his own eyes damp with tears. "You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart," Robert said softly. "You were trying to be a good daughter. But what your mother asked you to do, it wasn't right. It wasn't fair to you." The days that followed were difficult. Catherine was arrested for fraud and child endangerment. The investigation revealed that Emma had never been injured in any accident. Catherine had concocted the entire story after her husband's death, seeing it as a way to secure disability payments and sympathy from others, including Robert. Emma went to stay temporarily with Robert's sister, Margaret, who had children of her own and a warm, loving home. Robert visited every day, and slowly, he watched Emma begin to transform. She started to run again, to play, to laugh, sounds he realized he had never truly heard from her before. Marcus became a frequent visitor, too. Robert learned that the boy lived with his grandmother in a small apartment near the park. His mother worked 2 jobs to support them, and Marcus often spent his afternoons alone, watching the world go by. One evening, as Robert sat with Marcus on a bench in the park, he said, "You know, Marcus, what you did took real courage. You spoke up when it would have been easier to stay silent." Marcus shrugged, but Robert could see the pride in his eyes. "My grandma always says that if you see something wrong and don't say anything, you become part of the wrong. I didn't want to be part of hurting that little girl." Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my business card. I want you to keep it, and I want you to promise me something." "What?" Marcus asked. "I want you to promise that you'll come to me if you or your family ever need anything. And when you're ready for college, I want to talk to you about a scholarship program my company runs. The world needs more young people like you, people who stand up for what's right." Marcus's eyes widened. "Really? Really," Robert said firmly. "You changed 2 lives that day in the park, Marcus. Emma's and mine. That kind of courage and compassion, that's worth investing in." 6 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Robert sat in the same park, watching Emma play on the swings with Margaret's children. Marcus was there too, pushing Emma higher and higher as she laughed with pure joy. Robert thought about how life can change in a single moment, how one person's courage to speak the truth can unlock another person's freedom. He thought about the wedding he had been planning with Catherine, and how close he had come to becoming part of a life built on deception. But mostly, he thought about second chances. Emma would need therapy to help her process what her mother had done, but she was resilient and surrounded by people who loved her. Robert had begun adoption proceedings. He couldn't imagine his life without this brave little girl in it now. As for Catherine, she was serving time and receiving counseling. Robert hoped that someday she would understand the damage she had done and find her own path to healing. Emma ran over to Robert, her cheeks flushed with happiness. "Robert, did you see how high I was swinging?" "I did," he said, pulling her close. "You were flying, sweetheart. I love being able to run and play," Emma said, her eyes bright. "Thank you for believing Marcus. Thank you for helping me tell the truth." Robert looked over at Marcus, who was now sitting on a bench doing his homework. "We should all thank Marcus," he said. "He's the real hero of this story." As the sun began to set over Riverside Park, casting everything in a golden glow, Robert felt a deep sense of peace. Life had taught him that true wealth isn't measured in money or status, but in the courage to do what's right and the grace to help others find their way to freedom. And sometimes, he thought, wisdom comes from the most unexpected places, like a 10-year-old boy with worn sneakers and a heart brave enough to speak the truth.